I am very excited today. There are a lot of new faces here at JEA, a lot of people that are in different positions, and I'm so glad to have here today the VP and GM of both water and energy. And their schedules are very hectic, so it's fortunate that we have them. And our VP GM of energy just started with us on January 2nd, Karen Anders. And Daryl Calhoun, who is my boss, is the VP GM of water. And Daryl's going to come up and say a few words, followed by Karen. Darren?
Thank you, Ray. Yeah, Karen and I were up here at 8 o'clock, and we're like, uh-oh, this isn't going so well. But so it looks a lot better now. So I just want to take a few minutes to introduce myself. Daryl Calhoun, VP GM Water and Wastewater Systems. About the last week in January is when I came into this role, so I've got a heck of a lot more experience than Karen does here. But we've done some things, I think, you'll see today to ease the burden. Generators on Class 1 pump stations being my favorite. So understand that what we are doing is balancing the long-term R&R and costs to JEA with obviously your costs and expenses in building things up front. So I'm excited for you guys for the day to hear what we've got for you. I appreciate what you do. We added, I think it was 32 pump stations last year. So I don't know whether to curse you or thank you, but Jacksonville's growing, our service territory is growing, and it's important that we have these type of sessions where we can get together and communicate. Please feel free, if you have problems or input that you think you should get to us, to contact Raynetta or myself and express those concerns. Don't let things build up. We want to have an open dialogue with you guys and do good work. So again, thank you for showing up. Have a great day and ask plenty of questions, and I appreciate you attending for sure. Karen, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am on week 2, but I do have 35 years of industry experience both with Exelon and Duke Energy. So I certainly understand how important the relationship is that we have together. And I also look forward to meeting your expectations and want to echo that if there are concerns, please let's talk about them and work it out. So I'm still drinking from the proverbial fire hydrant, but I'm yeah, it's very good water. But I am really pleased to be here, and I thank you all for what you're doing. And again, I look forward to working with all of you. So.
Thank you. Yes. Follow the evacuation routes. Thank you. Okay, like Daryl said, there is a lot that's going on, a lot of development. And this just gives just a very brief overview as far as the activity and as far as the growth that we have seen. If you look at fiscal year 2015 and then fast forward to this year, it's almost quadrupled in some areas, tripled in some, quadrupled in others as far as infrastructure. So there's a lot of activities, and it's important that we keep this communication open. And this is just on the water side of the business, and there's a similar story on the electric side as well. So I'm just trying to put this into context. So we're now going to go ahead and get started with the agenda. And here is the agenda, and it follows a logical process. Basically, we're going to go from application to review to design, everything prior to construction. We're going to take a break, and then we're going to go into construction, then we're going to take a break, and then we're going to go into more construction. And finally, at the end of this, we're going to give you information as far as what's new as far as our guidelines, what's new as far as permitting, what's new as far as innovation and technology that we're going to be utilizing. And we want to make sure that this is interactive. So we want to make sure that we have time for questions and answers throughout this session. So there is the agenda. We're going to stick to it. And the first person who has worked very, very hard on this that I'm going to introduce is my development manager, Deanna Davis, and she's going to do section 1 or start that. Welcome.
My name is Jeremy Williams. I am the Associate Manager for Electric Services and Development Projects. We're switching gears a little bit, moving over onto the electric side of the house. We've got a good intro from our water and sewer friends. Felt this was a good place to interject a little bit about our pre-submittal process and submittal process at this point. You'll see in the agenda that we'll move into construction and later details of the process as we get through today's work, but this is a good spot to bring us into the middle. A little bit about me. I have 12 years here with JEA as of this week. Spent a lot of time working with commercial customers before moving into this group. You may have worked with my predecessors, Gerald Donsky, who is our manager of electric services and still here, Josh Gordon, who runs our construction area now, contract administration, or Ken Talley, who had many years here prior to us moving into this role. As you might imagine, as people move, processes change, we're becoming a little more nimble, a little more flexible, and that's what's driving a lot of the change that you're going to see here today. In the past, you would have dropped off plans most likely to Ken, Josh, or Gerald, or mailed them into our mailroom. Now we're accepting all of our requests at our new inbox, elecdev@jea.com. I manage that inbox as well as members of my team. I'm available. You'll see my contact information here at the end of the presentation for more information, but we monitor that 24/7 to try to get things moving as quickly as possible. Our process tends to move somewhat in parallel with your water and sewer plans. We're typically later in the process. There are more steps to take place at water and sewer. Electric is typically, if you're a couple of months, 2-3 months before your construction's about to begin, you want to reach out to us for a pre-submittal meeting most likely. Quick survey, how many have done a project electrically speaking and design within the last 6 months with us? Raise your hand. Oh, so about half the room. So if you haven't done a project with us within the last 6 months, I highly encourage reaching out to the inbox or me directly to schedule a pre-submittal meeting. We'll host that here at headquarters, or I can arrange to have a call-in number put together so we can include any contractors, engineering companies, or firms that may be out of state. As you heard earlier, there's tremendous growth going on at the moment, and with lots of growth, we have new parties, folks that might not know as much about the process, and meetings like this are helping us get the word out to help accelerate the process and meet your deadlines as well as ours. You'll want to include your checklist. There's a checklist on our website. The website has all of our information on it now. It was recently updated as of October. It has our basic information for what we're looking for. It doesn't have to be fully filled out at pre-submittal time. It just needs to have some basic information to help us discuss with you where you're at with your project and what you're looking for from a time frame standpoint. If you have plans, whether they're conceptual or 90%, 100%, bring them along so that we can have a chat about them. And then if you have any specific questions about how the process works, this is the time for us to have that discussion so that you can build that into your construction plan. Website there you see, jea.com. If you click on the engineering and construction button, that'll then take you to electric development. And then once you hit electric development, our 3 options for underground commercial, underground residential, and underground apartment are all right there. All right, project submittal. So after pre-submittal, once you've gathered all your documents, we ask that you have all your documents ready at submittal time. You're going to send those electronically now to our inbox, elecdev@jea.com. I mentioned our URDs. URDs, underground residential development. That's for our residential lots. Our UADs or our multifamilies, that's going to consider anything apartment-based and or townhomes. And then our UCDs are underground commercial development, which is going to help us reach individual parcels in a larger retail development or shopping center, for example. Once you send your information to our inbox, our objective is to be able to review those plans within 5 business days and either give you comments for what we need to be corrected or adjusted, or I'll give you an acceptance letter saying your submittal's been accepted, and then you'll receive some contact information from me on who your project engineer is going to be that's going to be designing your project from here on out. Common corrections that we see. Your plat's missing. CAD file features may not be present. Our streetlight authorization may not have come back from the city yet, so you're still waiting on that to come back. Your letter of intent may not have been signed by the developer. Your area light contract may not have the correct user signature on it. I know that's been kind of a headache for some of you here recently. If you don't already have an account with us, the person on the account needs to match what comes in on our streetlight authorization to make sure that we're starting those services with someone who's going to be familiar with it once they start seeing it on your bill. Townhomes are accepted and processed through us as a UAD. We do that mostly because of the gang meter cans that are going to be on the end of each of the buildings. If we're serving more than one customer per se, that's what's going to trigger us to move in the UAD area. And we can talk a little bit about that more later when we get into the design process. Missing riser diagrams, if you have a UAD or even in the townhome cases, we need those riser diagrams to be able to accurately determine what your load's going to be and help us streamline where we're going to place these transformers and make sure we're not putting more infrastructure out than we really need to do. Risers are also important for our meter services group who needs to do a meter room evaluation for safety and access. We want to make sure that we have the appropriate dimensions to be able to get in and service that equipment. And then if there is a utility relocation, if we have existing infrastructure already in the area, if there are poles in the way or homes that are already on the property that you're developing, we need some survey information either from your civil or from someone that's already done some work on the area to see where that infrastructure is. If we have it at submittal time frame, it'll push the design through way quicker. All right, so now you've received an email from me saying your project has been accepted and it's been assigned to a project engineer. Our preliminary design objective is to get you a preliminary design within 20 business days. We're running in the 10 to 20 day range now because of the excessive volume that we're seeing and the exciting growth that we have. But hopefully that's helping meet some of the time frames that you have as well. Our engineering comments are due back within 10 business days. So if you get the plan, we just ask that give it a look real quick to make sure that it meets your needs. If it doesn't, we want to know about that now to be able to correct that before that engineer moves on to the next project or gets something else going. Approve our design. So once the design is approved, we've gotten some feedback from you that the design is good. There are no changes that need to be made. We're then going to rely on you to tell us when your electrical contractor has been selected and is ready to move forward with our pre-construction meeting on site. So that's when your project engineer from JEA will be there, your JEA construction inspector, developer and/or engineer's representative, and the electrical contractor will all meet on site to release that design to allow you to begin the installation of your conduit system. And then once you give that project engineer your date, that project engineer can then set all that up for you. They'll put the date together, communicate with all the parties that are involved, and make sure that we get the project started off on the best foot. Doesn't necessarily have to be on site. If you don't want it to be on site, you can propose another place, but we have found that it's more effective to have everyone there to get your eyes on what we're facing to make sure that's nothing that we've left out so far before we get started. All right, that's all from me at the electric stage. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Brandon Traub, our real estate coordinator, to talk a little bit about real estate.
I'm Brandon Traub from Real Estate Services. Once you have approved plans from water, wastewater, and electric, you should know what your real estate needs are going to be, whether or not you need an easement for a meter or mains or electric service, or whether or not you're submitting a plat for a new development. Plats, we're going to change something I think most of the developers are going to be happy with. We're no longer going to require hard copies of the plats at plat review. We do still need a hard copy of the Phase 1 environmental assessment if there is a lift station being dedicated to JEA. So you can email PDFs of the plat, the title search. Always include the availability number provided by Deanna's department so that I can process the plat and documents for review. It helps expedite things. Hard copy PDF, availability number, title search on the plat. That's what we need. If there's a lift station, we need a Phase 1 environmental. I do need a hard copy of the Phase 1 environmental, not of the plat. Easements. If you have a main or a meter that is on private property, JEA is going to need an easement for that. For easements, I need the original, fully executed easement with the legal description and depiction of the easement area for review. I also need a title search. We prefer that the title search be specific to the easement. If it's not, if it's on a parent tract, my attorney could kick it back. It helps if it's specific to the easement. It doesn't necessarily have to be specific to the easement every time, but it helps. We need a title search and the availability number to route those for review as well. Use and hold harmless agreements. If you're going to be using an existing JEA easement, or if you need JEA fee-owned property for anything, whether or not it's ingress, egress to your project, or you're going to put pavers or something, JEA is only required to restore things back to county standard. If there's anything that's going to be above county standard, we're going to need to go through the JEA use of real property, hold harmless application process, and we're going to need to enter into an agreement with the property owner and JEA. The reason is we can't always replace pavers after they've been in for a couple years. You can't find the same stuff, so people could be upset. You know, there's walls or retention walls or parking on JEA property. We're going to need to enter into an agreement to have that. And if there's any other questions regarding real estate, go to jea.com, real estate services. My contact information is there. If you need forms for easements or deeds or the standard plat dedication language, just email me. We'll get it to you as soon as possible. It doesn't take very long. And just, you know, whatever questions you have to help expedite your real estate needs, let me know and we'll take care of it. Thank you.
All right, so that's going to conclude our section 1, water, wastewater, and electric pre-construction. We'll take questions now at this time for just the stuff that we have covered. We're going to take questions at the end of each section so that we cover just those ones. So does anyone have any questions on anything that was covered or maybe something that wasn't?
The question was, is there a way of providing a CAD file that shows all the features that we need up front as opposed to the back and forth that we often have to go through? Well, this feature's missing, that feature's missing, or what needs to be done up front so that we can make sure that the first file that we receive has everything that we need in it. And we are working to provide that on our website. There's 2 links there today that are somewhat outdated. There's a DGN and a DWG that's there, but it doesn't have all the newer layers, and it doesn't have all of the color tables, if you will, that are associated with those 2. So we do recognize that, and we'll make that change to help. Absolutely.
So the question was, if you have a phase 1 on your full development, why does JEA require a phase 1 environmental done specific to the lift station tract? The answer that I have received numerous times from environmental is because the phase 1s, when they cover a full development, will talk about things that are X amount of miles away or areas that are adjacent to or next to a development that are possible but probably not areas of concern environmentally. And when we minimize it to the lift station tract, it takes that concern away. So if you have this whole podium as your development, but just this little area is a lift station, if we shrink that phase 1 environmental assessment down to just the lift station, my environmental team doesn't have to review as much. They don't have to weed out and be concerned. What would happen is a lot of times they'd be asking for phase 2s and they'd have a lot of questions if they're looking at the environmental for your full development because of the adjacent properties that may have issues. And it makes it easier down the road if there was a problem and something wasn't shown on the phase 1, but we, you know, had a issue and there was an environmental concern. Having a phase 1 specific to the lift station tract would alleviate any concern of prior environmental contamination. That's what I've been told from environmental services. Right. Well, the procedure is that we get it specific to the lift station tract because anytime JEA buys property, we need a phase 1 specific to what I'm buying. I can't, if I'm buying a 50 by 50, I can't accept a phase 1 for a 3-acre parcel. So anytime JEA is going to own a property and fee, we're going to need a phase 1 environmental specific to that property. I mean, it's just same as if you as a developer were going to go buy a property, but it was subdivided. You're probably not going to want a phase one on a piece of property that's much bigger than what you're purchasing. Hope that answers your question.
Brandon, is there a timing on the phase one? Does it expire? Is it the year of the septic package, a year of the startup?
That's a good question. I get that a lot. We've accepted them up to a year old. They prefer them to be no greater than 6 months old, but I know that they will accept them up to a year old. If it's 13, 14 months old, feel free to send it to me. I'll ask them and we'll see what we can do. We're not trying to, be difficult on the phase ones, but it is a requirement. Environmental issues are always a concern. Go ahead, sir. The question was, is that from when the project is started or when I receive the phase one? We prefer it to be from when I receive it.
And his question was, if he starts a project with the plan reviewer, does he need to just continue to direct everything to that plan reviewer instead of the general mailbox? The answer is it depends. When you originally came in with your project, did you identify that here's one project and I'm going to have 5 phases? Then you will continue to submit. You do have to submit to the main review box. As a FYI for everybody, I know about a year ago we had this person does this, that person does that. In development, we've changed it up to where our goal is that the person that you have plan reviewer wise in your pre-design meeting is the person that you have throughout the duration of your project. However, we do want you to direct your emails to the main mailbox, not directly to that person. Feel free to copy that person, but should that person be on vacation for 3 or 4 weeks, your project would be sitting in limbo and we wouldn't know about it. So that's the importance of that general email. If you do have a contact and you are working directly with a particular plan reviewer, feel free to copy them on it, put them in the to file, whatever. But we all have access to that other email box. So that is just one extra layer of insurance that your project doesn't fall through the cracks.
All right, shifting gears a little bit back to electric construction. When I left you last, we were at the point where you've received your preliminary design from your project engineer. And you've had 10 days to take a look at it, decide if there's anything that needed to be corrected, any modifications, any changes. And your electrical contractor has now reached out, or yourself has reached out to the project engineer to select a date for us to have our pre-con on site now. So we're going to be picking up from there. Pre-construction meeting. It's an important meeting because it kind of sets the tone for the rest of the project with regards to our engagement with you through electric construction. Your design is going to be officially released for conduit and system installation at that point. So whatever gets discussed at that meeting, if it needs to be a red line, if there's something that comes out of it, that's okay. That's reasonable. It's going to happen from time to time. But we want that meeting day to be the day where everything is set going forward from a design standpoint. You're going to meet your JEA inspector at that point as well. We have a team of 4 inspectors that are working our whole area, so they are very busy folks. But if our project engineer and our JEA inspector are not at that meeting, then we don't consider that a good pre-con meeting. We're going to want to get back together with the appropriate parties to make that happen. During the meeting, we'll talk about construction standards. There's Q&A, right? For our more familiar contractors here in town, you know the works, you do a good job at it, and we have very little difficulties with that. For some of our newcomers who are taking jobs and working with us for the first or maybe second time, these pre-con meetings can be more detailed and more complex, and we can help get you that information that's going to help make this job go a lot smoother for you. Contribution aid of construction, CIAC. If your project includes any upgraded area lighting or street lighting, so in Duval County, if you selected a street light that's more than the city is going to allow, your 401 post tops, if you want something nicer in your project, you'll receive an invoice from our project engineer at that point, and it's during this construction phase that we're going to anticipate receiving that payment back for CIAC before we get to that cable spot. If you're in St. Johns County, County requires you to put all the public lighting up, so you'll send us an area light contract, which was during this middle phase. And if it's above and beyond what the standard is, then you'll have a CIAC invoice to take care of that point. They're typically net 30 days, but if you need some time, reach out to us and we'll work with you to try to make it match up with how your funding's working for the project. Before I leave the pre-con meeting, you'll notice that we have begun to reach out to our other utilities in the area, AT&T, Comcast, especially when we're starting a large project the very first time. It's important to know where each other is going to be. It's important to reiterate the easement locations where we plan to be, where our standards say we can be. We've noticed a lot of inconsistencies with that recently, so I ask for your help with trying to make sure that we respect where we're going to be in our 7.5 foot or 10 foot for a UCD, and then some oversight with our other utilities to make sure they're not impounding on some of the easements that we have dedicated just for us. I have quite a few contacts with those folks, as I'm sure you do. I've encouraged them to join the meetings. And if you haven't been to one in a while as a developer or an engineer, I know it's typically just the electrical contractor, but I encourage you to take advantage of that from time to time. Check in and see how it's going. That kind of gives you a pulse of how the project's working at that point too. So take advantage of that if you can. So we have our contractor. Your contractor installs the actual conduit system at this point, once we release the pre-con meeting. So we're on your schedule at that point as the contractors installing conduit, installing street light bases, installing manholes. You'll contact us, or the contractor will contact the project engineer when the system is done. Our inspector will be joining in at times during the project to stop in and see how things are going. If he sees something, he may reach out to the electrical contractor directly at that point to resolve whatever issue may be happening. But for most of the conduit stage, the communication is taking place between contractor and JEA inspector. But please keep in mind that your project engineer is continuing to be your single point of contact throughout that. You also have me available through the inbox, but try to use your project engineer first. So your conduit system has now been installed and you're ready to move forward with the final inspection. Make sure that your contractor reaches out to our JEA inspector to make that happen. If you can't reach the inspector, then use your chain of command, go through the project engineer, and advice. And if you need to reach me, I'm available too. Your as-built needs to be accepted along with your schedule of values and have your punch list completed before we consider it fully accepted at that point. So your contractor will call our inspector. The inspector usually can get out within 2 to 3 days to do the final inspection. There's a punch list that's typically created for some things that might need to be corrected. That punch list needs to be done. He may need to be called back out to re-inspect. Keep in mind that that's another couple of days at that point if not everything's done on the day he arrives for the first inspection. And then once all the punch list items are done, once the as-built is received, signed, and then you have your schedule of values signed, those 3 items are what's needed for us to move on to our next step, which is going to be final inspection, right? So here, well, before we get to that, I forgot I added this slide. Developer construction correction. So here's some of the things that would prevent us from getting to this next stage. What do we need to see at final inspection? Is your curb and gutter poured? Is your roadway stabilized? I know with trying to match up different phases of who you've got on site, it's easy to say, can we just move past one or move past the other? But it's imperative from a grade standpoint that we have a lot of these available so that we know where we're going to be setting our equipment. Lot corners, equipment easements established with grades. Conduit system is 100% there. We need street light conduit. We need your primary conduit. Everything needs to be in when that inspector shows up. We've had some situations where we're not seeing string and conduit yet. We need the string to be there for us to be safe. Lots labeled secondary conduit with your addresses in it. Are they where they need to be? Are there pads set on the lot lines where they need to be per the standard? The area around transformers. We get a lot of rain here in Florida, right? So if you've left the job and you're coming back for final inspection and there's been a couple of storms, there's a very good chance that pad is leaning. We want that pad to be level and at grade before we move on to the next step. So now we've gone to as-built acceptance. Here are the 3 steps that I just mentioned previously. Do we have pictures? inside your concrete manholes. Just want to make sure that our reducers are there if we need it, and our phases are matching up if we have 3-phase coming into the project. Your signed and sealed schedule of values and your punch list items are all done. So as long as all 3 of those are available, your inspector will then bring all of those materials back to our project engineer here at downtown. Project engineer will then move on to as-built acceptance. So we have, within 10 business days, we plan to be able to create our JEA construction cable job at that point. So now it's our turn to go in, work with our crews to get our cable scheduled, street light scheduled, and deliver our packages to our construction crews. So the construction guys will receive the package from the project engineer within that 10 business day window. You should be getting an email or a communication from the project engineer at that point, letting you know that all of your materials have been accepted and it's moved on to the next stage, which is now scheduling for construction. And then you'll also get an email within that 10-day window saying, okay, now we've moved on to the construction period. Our crews now have your project. We're anticipating energizing your project within the next 4 to 6 weeks, which is our typical window at the moment. If you don't get those communications, reach out to me because those are important to keep you posted. You know, part of this is to make sure that all of the involved parties, developer, engineer, contractor, are all getting the same information. It's easy for the electrical contractor to pass on some information, but these are steps that we want to make sure that everyone understands where everyone is at the project standpoint. All right, so now I'm going to turn it over to Gerald Donsky. He's our manager of electric services and development projects. Talk a little bit about addressing premises and our service points. There you go, Gerald.
Good morning. My name is Gerald Donsky, I'm manager of electric services. Premise records and service points, basically addresses. My department and our GIS group is responsible for creating the addresses in our system for billing and permits and all that records that we need. Single-family homes, we classify that as a URD. We put a polygon on our map, and we create points, and all those points represent an address. It gives us some latitude, longitude information. And as a URD, single-family, the address plan is very important from a local government agency, be it Duval County or St. Johns County. We create the premise record, and underneath that, there'll be service points. We got electric, water, sewer, reclaim, whatever the development may have is included underneath that premise record that we create. Permit process, the permits, electric permits that come in, we have a matching address, they match up. They automatically process the permit, and it'll release it for line work and release it for a meter install. But the line work and meter install aren't going to go anywhere until we get that final inspection from the city. And that process is working pretty good between Duval, St. John's. Non-residential, if it's classified as a non-residential service, it will not auto-update, and those are handled by my department. I got a group of engineers that manage the permits that come in. Multifamily dwellings, be it duplex, townhomes, or apartments, same thing. We get the address plan from the government agency, and that's part of the initial development process as well. We get that address plan. It all shows up on the map, and the drawings, the designs. We create the records, water, sewer, residential. Water, you maybe have it metered by the whole building, or if it's a townhome, each one would typically get a meter for each unit. The auto update process for those permits, it's based on the amps and volts. So, for the UAD projects, if it's within that UAD boundary, they release for a meter set only. So once again, the permit is waiting for that final inspection before it actually lets that go. So you can, once you have the permit in our system, you can apply for the service. That way it gets the right meter type. If you apply ahead of time, there's no permit information there, and it may stall the installation. Non-residential permit, same thing. They do not auto-update. Duval County, we get a data file from them every 3 hours. We get new permits and status updates. The status updates occur automatically. The new permits are created automatically. as long as we have a matching record. If there's not a matching record, then we end up having to create a record for that permit. St. Johns County, we get a permit data file from them once a day. It gets processed at 6 a.m. The new permits are staged, and my department, we review them, and then we add them into the system. If it's a status update from St. Johns County, if we have a matching permit number record, that permit is automatically updated to a final status or whatever status we get rough status from them as well. Atlantic Beach, Orange Park, Baldwin, those are email. They send us paper copies, and we add them into our system manually. And they notify us manually as well with an email. Duval County, temporary service poles in Duval County. If you have single-family construction or construction that has an individual address, like the townhomes, there's a flat fee connected on the new home building permit, and the temporary service is a flat rate. A meter's not required. All of it is line work. So the permit comes in, gets in our system, and once it finals, the engineer releases it. It goes out for a line work connection, and it should be hot after that. They don't have to have a meter can. They just have to at least a disconnect and some outlets. That's all we need for the flat rate poles. A lot of them, they'll have the meter can, they'll put a jumper in it and run it that way. Multifamily and commercial projects, they require a metered temporary service. So if you got a big apartment complex, you can set a temporary pole by each transformer, but they would have to be metered. And in order to get the meter installed, you have to call in and request the service to start. That'll get a meter guy out there. The line work will process ahead of time once you get the final, but to get the meter, that has to be a call to start that application for service. The non-metered temporary services are limited to your construction tools, gang of outlets. You don't want job trailers hooked up to them. Other agencies, Baldwin, Atlantic Beach, Orange Park, those are all metered temporary services as well. Irrigation services, signs and whatnot you have in your project, they should go through the addressing process as well. Those, we usually wait on creating them. When the permit comes over, we'll create a record for it, and it'll have a process. And that'll go through my department as well. The engineers review the permits and connection work that need to happen. Unmetered mains, gang meter centers with a main disconnect. If you have a smaller building, like with 6 units or less by the National Electric Code, you don't have to have that main disconnect, and you don't need a main UM01 or unmetered main permit. Those require a little special handling. And we try and catch most of them, and what we do is we'll add line work to one of the permits and let them know that it's a gang of 6 meters, and they're making the connections for that in the transformer. Rules and regulations for electric service, we got that at jea.com. Frequent issues that could possibly delay the service. A few years ago, probably 5, 6 years ago, they started requiring conduit installed in every string installed in every conduit. That was one issue that can delay stuff getting done. With the residential permits, the first people who get to look at it really could be, because they auto process, is going to be the line crew. They'll go out there, no string, they'll put an exception on it and drive away. Correct voltage, amps, phase, that's important. Get that right. A lot of times we'll get a permit come over for 200 amps, and the guys get out there and find it's a 300 amp service. Well, the meter shop turns it down, and it requires a different size conductor if it's a residential service. If you got a 3-phase service, it's important to get the phase marking correct. That's another issue we have frequently. The big apartment complexes, if you got the 3-phase pad mount transformers, 12208, that requires a 5th jaw, but if it's the single-phase pad mounts, the meter shop will not install a meter if there's a 5th jaw in there. So no 5th jaws if it's 12240. If you have a 12208 single-phase service, that's where it requires a 5th jaw. We have at JA.com also under the engineering and construction banner, there is a electric permit status. You can put in an address and hit it, and it'll give you the permit that's attached to that address, and it gives a couple statuses there. Also, if you have an electric meter or water meter out there, there's also a water meter function there as well. You can look that up, and it gives you the address where it's located.
All right, what's new? I know you're curious. All right, so let's get into it. Water, wastewater development website updates. I know that our website in the past has not been the most user-friendly. The development team has received numerous phone calls from you asking, where's this? Why isn't that here? Why isn't this available? So here you go. And if we have missed anything, please do let us know. We'll be happy to help get that on there. So our location is jea.com, engineering and construction, water, wastewater development. If you just get on jea.com, up at the top, there's a blue form that says engineering and construction, drops down to a gray bar, and then you can click on water and wastewater development. Some of the updates that we have provided, forms and procedures, this is huge. Real estate links. So I know a lot of you guys have need to do hold harmless agreements. In the past, that's been get back and forth with Brandon. There's a link on here now to Brandon's real estate page so that you can go get the forms. You can get information on real estate. Permit and COC applications for both JEA and FDEP, which I know in the past we had links to the FDEP ones that were not actually links to the permit applications. So these are here, they're in PDF. Go ahead, download them, use them. Pre-construction meeting request form. I know that is something that Josh went over in his presentation. It has a lot of the information that you are already providing to us. It's just on the form. And I know in the past that you've just called Chris Barrington to set up a pre-construction form or a pre-construction meeting. But if you please would include the form, copy Chris if you want, but include it that water, sewer, electric development website. Then that way, if Chris is not here, we can still start processing these. As you know, we do have a lot of pre-con meetings, so even though Chris is going to run it for you, if we can get you on the schedule, that's going to be that much faster for you. As-built submittal, transmittal, and checklist, I already went over this. There's a link on there. It's a PDF. It's an editable PDF, so you don't need to print and write on it. You can just type, do your check marks or your initials, and print it out. We've also included on there an FDOT special instructions. Again, that's an editable PDF. If any of the PDFs that are on there are not editable and you would like them to be, please do let me know. I think I got them all, but I'm not entirely certain. Just a couple of snips from our website. This is the main water, wastewater, reclaimed water development page. So I'm going to step away from the mic just for a second. On the left side of your screen, there's always that blue that has links. These are also links. So those are forms and procedures, reference materials, stages of a project, self-service calculations. That's where GG's applications for water services are, and how to connect to water and sewer services. If you click on stages of a project, you're going to get 4 different websites: initiation, design, construction, and acceptance. All of the acceptance documents that are part of Chris's package that he gets at the end of the project are on there. Our forms and procedures page has also been updated, so it's got headings, and they're all in order. So it's not, you know, the last thing I need is the first thing on the page. We have put on here the typical review times, both for preliminary plan submittal, revision, and preliminary and the as-built submittal. I will reiterate, Josh had pointed out when you need a revision, if you need to change something, you need to submit that to us. Now, we're very aware that you're in construction, you don't have the time to go back and forth with the paper. So we have a process in place that when you are under construction, you can email it to us. Again, the Water Sewer Development website and your plan reviewer. Send us the PDF of your revision. We will review it electronically. If we need to provide you any comments, we will provide them to you electronically. Kick it back to us, we'll approve it electronically, and then at that point, your contractor continue to do work. You send us the hard copies so we can stamp them and everybody's good. This will help facilitate a faster review on your as-built approval because we're going off of our latest approved plan. So if you've made major changes that are not on the approved plans that we have, that's really going to delay that as-built approval. We've also on the reclaimed water irrigation spot down the bottom. I know a lot of times we get questions, what's the service territory for the reclaimed water? That map is there. So that blue highlighted area, if you just click on that, you're going to have a map that pops up that gives you our reclaimed service territory. Self-service center, again, this is that location up at the top. You can see water or development project status. Click on track status of the project and you just put in your availability number, and it will give you a list of everything that has been recorded in terms of JEA process for that. Capacity calculators, this is the page that you can get to that. Gigi actually showed you the clips of them. And then also water sewer service applications. So we've put this stuff in multiple locations because I know you're on my page a lot, you're on her page a lot. So we're trying to marry them back and forth so it's easier for you when you're not going. Alrighty, design guideline notable items. JEA.com, we've got all of our design guidelines on there. They're PDFs. It's an editable PDF. It's hyperlinked. So if you want to know, what is that email address I need to send to for pre-con, go to the pre-con section. The email address is hyperlinked. You just click on it. It already has the subject line in there. You just need to fill out your name and your project number. A lot of the links that we refer to, those are all hyperlinked. So we've done a lot of work on making the design guidelines very usable for you. So please go bookmark this page. Section 2.3 of the design review times, again, I've already laid those out on the web page, but that is where those are at. We get that question all the time. How long is this going to take? Now, when I say typical review times, that does not mean, that we take 15 days. We've actually got a pretty good turnaround on all of our review times, but you need to game plan on that time window. Do not expect us to be able to turn something around in one day. Even if we were able to do it for the last 4 projects you have, it just depends on the workload that we have and where you come in on that queue. Section 2.9, that's that pre-con meeting. You also have the link for the pre-con meeting form. Now, getting a little bit deeper into some of the other changes that we've had. Section 2.4.1 is the infill development section that we have added in. You must request an availability letter for infill development. And when I say infill development, it's old neighborhoods. I had 4 lots that I bought that were platted in 1950, and now I'm breaking it up into 4 individual services as opposed to 1. That's how we refer to infill development. It's a lot of lot splits. There's multiple addresses on the same street. If you've got 3 or 4 addresses on the same block, you do not need 3 or 4 availability letters. Put in the request for 1, reference the addresses. If you've got different RE numbers, go ahead and put those in there. It makes no sense for you to have to keep track 4 of them, and we have to do all of those. So we certainly do not want more availability letters out there than need to be. This will help all of us. Infill layouts. So because this isn't an area that, say I had a house and I had it on 4 lots, maybe lot 1 I had my water service and lot 3 I had my sewer service. And now you're going to come in and you're going to want water and sewer on each one of those lots. I need a layout to show me where that water service is and where the sewer service is so that my team can say, lot 1 you have water, you need sewer. Lot 3 you have sewer, you need water. Lots 2 and 4 you need both. We make those notes and then you can go process it at the counter. It makes your time for dealing with this a whole lot faster than it was before, and it makes it a lot quicker for the metering teams to go in or the construction teams to go in if taps need to be made. They know what they need to do, they know where they need to do it. If you have got a situation where you are asking us to put in a sewer service, we are going to need a layout. Go take a look at this section for all of the requirements on that layout. It doesn't need to be an engineered plan. You've got a grading layout that you have to turn into the city anyway. That's what we're looking for. But really what we need the finished floor elevation for that house. We need to be able to tell you, yes, you can gravity from that home to the sewer service. You don't want to find out after you've paid for a sewer tap that now you've got to put a pump in to get to the sewer, or guess what, you can't even do that. So that's to help you. That's our planning process for it. So there are now 2 ways for you to be able to get any new installed services on infill development. One is JEA installed services. Those are typically installed within 10 business days. And the process is you give us the layout, we make the notes in the system, you go to Water Pre-Service, apply, pay your fees, the work is scheduled, generally within 10 business days, you have the services you need. There's another option now for builder installed services that will require a pre-con meeting and inspection, and that's 24/7 inspection. Anytime your contractor's out there, our inspector will be as well. It's also going to include as-built and acceptance. So go take a look at that section for the details on that. If you have any questions, you can email me. I will tell you it's a new process that we've just put in place. So there are bugs that we're working out, so work with us on that, please. Section 2.4.2, the development plan submittal. This is probably 2.5 pages of, you need to make sure that you have this, and you've got it broken into general requirements, and then if you've got water, here's what you need, sewer. So here's the highlights on some of the changes. As you guys know, you turn in plans maybe, we'll say October. You don't get your plans approved to say maybe May of the next year. You all know when you do this that your plans are based on the standards that are in place when you submit the plans to us. Now, if you have an approval stamp on your plans that say May 2019, but you designed your plans for 2018 standards, you've had a little bit of an issue in the past. So what we're doing now, we're asking all the engineers, when you submit plans to us, put a note on the cover sheet. Plans designed under years, 2018, 2017, 2019, those standards. Then that way, through the entire construction and acceptance, we will not have issues of, oh, we changed this on the lift station. Oh, but that was for 2017 and now we're in 2018. You guys all know what I'm talking about. It's been a big headache. So this is one of the things that we are doing to try and facilitate that being less of a hassle for you. Please put the availability number on the cover page of your plans. If you're really, really nice, please put it on every sheet of your plans. Pipe crossing information. You can either call this out at every pipe crossing or you can give us a table, but every pipe that crosses another pipe, that is JEA. So water reclaim, water sewer, water force main, water storm drain, or any of the other ones with the other ones. We need the bottom of the top pipe, the top of the bottom pipe, and the finished grade. We need to make sure that we've got the clearances, both between the pipes and that we'll have enough pipe cover. We're having too many instances where we are getting as-built and a pipe doesn't have enough coverage, or we get comments once we get it to permitting that the two pipes are way too close together, and that's a bit of a problem for you at that point. So we're going to try and knock that out during the design phase. Drawing scale, please keep it consistent from a page to a page. And then also, nothing bigger than 1:40. It's a little hard for us to read. Landscaping plans with proposed utilities shown. I know a lot of times you guys don't have, crazy landscaping plans. Other times people are putting trees on top of our water lines or sewer lines. We'd really like to know that. We'd like to help you not do that at the beginning because it's going to be a problem for you when you install it. Sample point locations. As Josh said in his presentation, the inspectors are no longer taking the sample points on your construction projects. That's going to the lab. The inspectors are giving the lab personnel the copies of the plans. They need to know where they need to go to pick up the samples. So engineers, please make sure you are putting your sample locations on your plans. Pipe profiles. Every pipe that you horizontally directional drill needs to have a profile. All force main pipe that you install, open cut, needs to have a profile. All water lines greater than 12 inches in diameter needs to have a profile. I know in the past we had something like, just put the finished grade and the elevation every 100 feet. That's no longer acceptable. We need to have that profile. So please do make a note on that. Section 3.1.5, flow comparison analysis. So we have, at the beginning of a project, somebody will put in a request for an availability letter and they'll say, my flow is this. They'll design their project. Here's my meter size. It'll get time to actually pay for the services fees on that meter, and it's, oh, this flow is not right, it needs to be less. Or, oh, this meter is not right, it needs to be less. And then you're kind of in a bind because you need your water, and we've got a whole review process that needs to go through on that. So to not put us in that position, all of us, you and us, we're asking that do that analysis during the plan review. So there is a section, Florida Administrative Code 64E-6008-1A. It's the table that tells you, here's the flow if it's this, here's the flow if it's that. In 1A, it talks about comparisons and just high-level points on it. Latest 12 months of water use data, 6 similar establishments in the same general vicinity. We have had people send us stuff that it's like, okay, this one's Florida, and this one's Wisconsin, and this one's California, not the same general vicinity. So please, we will not approve that. That is not a valid comparison. So please take a look at this section and make sure that you are providing all of the correct data. We have no problem doing this, but we do want to make sure that you're giving us all the information that we need to have in order to review and approve your request. A couple of other points. The analysis summary and backup documentation needs to be included. If we accept the system is sized based on the highest flow in any month for that establishment, not the average. That must be signed and sealed by a Florida PE, and it must be submitted no later than the final plans, please, because you're turning in your permit and your permitted flow is going through, we're keeping track of that. So if at the last second, way down here, you're going, well, I said 5,000, but I really meant 3,500, now we've got to change a bunch of stuff. So let's get it done at the beginning. You guys can know at that point, and I would also recommend, FYI, if you want to know what your costs are going to be, your capacity fees, your meter fees, whatever, you can go ask the water pre-service. You can use the calculators and verify with the water pre-service. So it's not sticker shock at the end. We don't want anybody to be in a situation of sticker shock, and we're all very willing to help you along the way to make sure that those numbers are very, very upfront and present for you. So please utilize us, because it's going to get to a time where you need your meter and we need to do these things, and it's not going to go fast enough for you. All righty, the big one. Emergency operations. So as most of you know, after the latest hurricane, we put in place all Class 1 pump stations that are dedicated to JEA need to have a generator. So we have backed off from that a little bit. So for Class 1 pump stations, we will allow what we're calling emergency storage. So how we are defining emergency storage, if you can have a minimum of 3-hour hold time based on the peak hourly flow for your development, whether it's commercial, residential, what have you, you can use the wet well, you can use the manholes, you can use the gravity system. You cannot use the ground. Thank you, right? You also cannot upsize your pipes or deepen your sewer system to get extra storage. So keep that in mind. But if you can meet that emergency storage, you do not need to have, generally speaking, backup power. Now, we still have the situations where if you're a repump lift station, if you've got a 12-inch or larger force main discharge, you need to have the generator. If you do not meet the emergency storage, you need to have the generator. And when I say generator or pony pump, it's one or the other, whichever it is that works best for your particular situation. If you have questions, let us know. Again, this is an analysis that needs to be done and submitted to us during the plan review. I would personally prefer it be done during the preliminary review, but just as long as it's done before the final acceptance, then we're good. And yes, your next question, or the question I'm sure we're going to get, we are accepting revisions on anything that has not been started that you had to have a generator. So if you meet those emergency requirements, yes, we will review your revision. Yes, we will allow you to have your emergency storage. All righty, Casey.
I'm going to talk to you this morning a little bit about some changes to our standards. Starting with our Class 1 pump stations, the emergency storage has already been addressed. The next kind of important change is we're no longer requiring flow meters, which I think will be a sizable savings as well. High RPM submersible pumps are approved. Right now, I believe there's only one approved manufacturer, and I'm pretty sure we're vetting another as we speak. Polyconcrete manholes and wet wells are approved and required in certain high corrosive applications. Traditional concrete manholes and wet wells are still approved for certain applications, and starting in 2020 will require a 50-year warranty in order to maintain approval. CCTV on new laterals is required. This is to protect the customer as well as the contractor, and also reduce JEA's future O&M. as-built drawings. Boundary survey is required on all pump stations. This includes the equipment within as well. You must provide the finished grade and top of pipe elevations for the pseudolateral stub outs. This is important. Asset data tables in Excel is required and in JEA format. Be sure to check the as-built checklist. It has changed, so you're not surprised by anything that you may have missed. Okay. Kyle?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kyle Schottler, and I am with the Water Wastewater Customer Response Team. I'm going to dive off into the special estimates. Starting off on a commercial project, you're going to be required to have approved plans before requesting the estimate. The estimate you should get back within 10 days, and it is good for 30 days. Do keep in mind that this estimate is in lieu of all water and wastewater taps, standard taps. The application needs to have the availability number, and along with the payment, it needs to be submitted to the water pre-service counter. Typical installation time is 10 business days, but that's going to vary depending on the complexity and scheduling. Also, we have to do, like Gigi said, 811 locates. When is a special estimate needed? Specifically, when a main line is 8 foot or deeper. That's obviously because of dewatering. Within DOT, St. Johns County, Nassau County right-of-ways, if it's on a City of Jacksonville pavement that has been paved within the last 5 years, or alongside sewer service, and or multiple taps. If you're requesting multiple taps within a block, all these are going to require a special estimate specifically because of asphalt overlay. We all know how expensive that is. Low pressure step systems, any new low pressure step systems that you're requesting, or sewer vacuum systems as well. Another conflict with utilities, cable, gas, electric, stormwater infrastructure. You got to think, if that's going to be in the way of the service tap location, then we're going to have to do and take extra measures to prevent it and to get you the service. We're going to move on to the residential flow meter tests. These tests can be requested when the project that you're working on has a 2-inch main line abutting the property and it's close but over the JEA limit of service connections, which is 5 connections on a 2-inch main line, a dead-end 2-inch main line, or 10 connections on a looped 2-inch main line. This application must be submitted to the JEA development team for review. Once they have reviewed it, they will, if it's approved, they will let you know, and you must take the application and the $82 fee, which is located on JEA.com, the application is, and you must take it to the JEA Water Pre-Service Center. They will then create a work order for our field technicians to go out and perform the test, which is typically done between Thursdays and Tuesdays, because that allows us to see variations in flows and pressures on the existing main line. These results are then given to the JEA development team for review, and they will determine whether or not you will be allowed to tie into that 2-inch main line. If there's any other questions regarding these, the flow tests or the special estimates, I'd be glad to answer after the presentation. Thank you.
All right. How many people build in St. Johns County and have dealt with Trish Carroll at the building department trying to get your building permit before your construction has been accepted? Should be, oh, that's it? Wow. I thought it would be like everybody. Okay, so just to give you guys an FYI on this, the St. Johns County is no longer accepting the JEA availability letters for showing proof of JEA going to provide you service. So we have met with Trish Carroll and come up with sort of a Band-Aid solution so that you can continue to get your building permits and build before you're done with your infrastructure, and we have accepted it. So just to give you a little bit of a background on that process, there are 3 ways that you can go about getting your building permit. You can either provide a copy of your overall project acceptance letter, which Chris Barrington or somebody from the development team will provide to you when we accept your project. Provide a copy of the new services receipt that you get from the water pre-service counter, or a pre-acceptance letter from JEA. You email us for that, and I'll get more into that later. Now, The thing is the project acceptance letter and the receipt will get you both your building permit and your building CO. The pre-acceptance letter will only get you your building permit, so keep in mind. So in order for you to get a pre-acceptance letter from us, your project needs to be under construction but not yet accepted. And when I say under construction, I don't mean email me today. I had a meeting with Chris this morning, check mark on the pre-acceptance. Infrastructure's in the ground, we're testing it, we're close. That is what I mean by you're under construction. The request letter, again, that water sewer development project request email. Attention, St. Johns County pre-acceptance letter, please include your project name, your availability number, and a single-page master layout showing all lot numbers for your development phase, buildings for commercial properties. Once we get that, we'll put together the letter. The letter will be emailed to you. So just as an RFI or a FYI note on this, if you get a pre-acceptance letter from me, I'm going to reference all of the lots that you asked me to if they're under construction. So your phase 1 is lots 1 through 50. Your layouts are going to show lots 1 through 50 because when you go to apply for your building permit, you're doing it with an address, probably not a lot number. So that's Trish's way to be able to go, okay, Deanna said this is the same area, I'm good. So I need legible street names and I need legible lot numbers. I would like them all on one page so you don't lose it. The letter is good for all applicable lots. So you don't need to come to me for lot 1, lot 5, lot 7. I'm giving you 1 through 50, reproduce it. And Trish is fine with it being reproduced, FYI, so that's not been an issue. When it comes to the pre-acceptance letters, if I've already issued a pre-acceptance letter, if we have issued you a pre-acceptance letter, then you're good. You don't need, or I'm sorry, not pre-acceptance, acceptance, then you're good. You don't need anything else. You don't need your receipts. You don't need any of that. So that is like your golden ticket. If you are developers, please share it with whomever it is that is running your real estate. I know a lot of times there's various groups that are building in these areas. Please don't inundate us with requests for multiple copies of these. Share them amongst yourselves because you're going to be able to get your stuff a lot faster. Make sure these guys know, keep copies of these because they can all be reused for the next lot and the next lot. But that is the process with Trish that's been in place for probably almost a year at this point. But I know I just had an issue in the last week. Somebody had no idea what that process is. So if you know it and you've done it, if you don't know it, now you do. And our last item is electronic plan submittal. So we've talked a lot about for water, wastewater, you need to submit to us hard copies and PDFs. Over the last year and a half, we've been trying to mostly do electronic plan review with the PDFs because it gets you your responses faster and it's easier for us to share it with other JEA personnel that have to review it. We currently have an RFI out on the street. It's actually due next Friday. We're trying to get an electronic plan review program. So our goal is hopefully by the end of at least this fiscal year, we'll have at least identified the company or the program that we're going to use for that. But just to give you guys an FYI on that, our goal is to get it to where you don't need to be running down here with multiple plan sets. You don't need to get the couriers. You don't need to wonder if somebody else picked up your plans in the mailroom. So we are working on that. Unfortunately, the electric group's a little bit further ahead than we are, but we're trying to catch up. So that is the end of our section 3 and the end of our presentation.